The man who terrified California was caught by ordinary people? This is the incredible true story of how the reign of the Night Stalker finally came to an end. In the last episode, we explored the chaos and fear that gripped California during the summer of 1985. A mysterious figure, later dubbed the Night Stalker, was breaking into homes seemingly at random, leaving behind a trail of terror and violence. The police were baffled, the public was in a panic, and no one knew who he was or where he would strike next. In Part 2, we'll follow the final, frantic days of Richard Ramirez. We'll uncover how forensic evidence finally caught up with him, how the public played a crucial role in his identification, and how the subsequent trial exposed the full, horrifying scale of his crimes. This isn't just a story about a killer, it's a story about a city that fought back. The investigation was a massive undertaking spanning multiple counties and police departments. But for months, they had very few solid leads. The Night Stalker was like a ghost. He left behind a legacy of fear, but little in the way of concrete evidence that could point to one single person. He used different weapons, his victims were diverse, and his methods seemed to evolve. The only consistent thread was the sheer brutality and the randomness of it all. For the investigators, it was like chasing a shadow. They knew they were dealing with one of the most prolific and sadistic killers in American history, but they just couldn't put a face to the name. Then came the breakthrough. It wasn't from a complex psychological profile or a lucky tip, but from something simple, something tangible, a single fingerprint. After an attack in Mission Viejo, investigators were able to lift a clear print from a rear-view mirror of a stolen car that the suspect had abandoned. This was the moment everything changed. The print was run through the brand new, and at the time, still experimental, automated fingerprint identification system, or OFFICE. The system returned a match. The print belonged to a 25-year-old man with a minor criminal record from El Paso, Texas. His name was Richard Ramirez. For the first time, the monster that had haunted California for months had an identity. The police now had a name and a face. A mugshot of Richard Ramirez was immediately blasted across every newspaper and television station in the state. The headline was clear: Night Stalker identified. The public was urged to be on the lookout for him, but warned that he was armed and extremely dangerous. The police prepared for a massive manhunt, expecting a long and difficult search for a man who had proven to be incredibly elusive. They had no idea that the public would get to him first. Unaware that his identity had been revealed, Richard Ramirez had taken a bus from Arizona back to Los Angeles. When he arrived, he walked into a liquor store in East LA to buy a drink and a newspaper. He saw his own face staring back at him from the front page. Panic set in. He tried to carjack a woman in the street, but she fought back. Her screams drew attention. More people started to notice him, recognizing the face from the news. A crowd began to form. Ramirez, realizing he was cornered, started running. What followed was pure chaos. This wasn't a police chase. It was a citizen's pursuit. A group of residents from the neighborhood chased him down the street. He was no longer the terrifying predator lurking in the shadows. He was a desperate man running for his life. The very people he had terrorized were now his hunters. They chased him, they tackled him, and they held him down. One man even struck him with a steel rod to subdue him. By the time the police arrived, Richard Ramirez, the feared Night Stalker, was already beaten, blooded, and held captive by the citizens of Los Angeles. The reign of terror was over, not with a strategic police raid, but with the raw, unified power of a community that had simply had enough. During his interrogation and subsequent trial, the world got its first real look at the man behind the chaos. Richard Ramirez was arrogant, defiant, and showed absolutely no remorse for his crimes. He seemed to thrive on the media attention, smiling for the cameras and drawing pentagrams on his hand in the courtroom. Psychiatrists who evaluated him described a deeply disturbed individual, detached from reality, manipulative, and obsessed with power and control. He enjoyed the fear he had created, but his bravado couldn't stand against the mountain of evidence the prosecution had assembled. The fingerprint was just the beginning. There were shoe prints, ballistics evidence linking guns to multiple crime scenes, stolen items found in his possession, and most importantly, the powerful testimony of his surviving victims. The web of evidence was overwhelming, connecting him irrefutably to the long list of horrific crimes. Finally, on September 20th, 1989, the verdict was delivered. After a long and grueling trial, the jury found Richard Ramirez guilty on all counts. He was convicted of 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assaults, and 14 burglaries. The courtroom was silent as the judge read the sentence. For his crimes, Ramirez received 19 separate death sentences, along with multiple life sentences to ensure he would never be free again. As he was led out of the courtroom, he flashed a twisted smile and said, "Big deal. Death always went with the territory." See you in Disneyland. But for the people of California, the verdict was a moment of profound relief. The fear that had ruled their lives for years had finally been put to an end. Justice, it seemed, had been served. Richard Ramirez was sent to San Quentin State Prison, where he remained on death row for over 2 decades. He died in prison from complications of B-cell lymphoma in 2013, never facing his execution. But the impact of his crimes lingered long after his capture. The Night Stalker case fundamentally changed the way cities approached public safety and policing. It highlighted the importance of interagency cooperation and demonstrated the power of new forensic technologies like AFIS. But more than that, it revealed how a single individual could exploit fear and uncertainty to hold an entire population hostage. His greatest weapon wasn't just violence, it was the randomness, the idea that anyone, anywhere, could be next. It shattered the illusion of safety within our own homes. So, what do you think? Did the intense media panic surrounding the Night Stalker make him harder to catch by driving him deeper into the shadows? Or did it ultimately lead to his downfall by making his face instantly recognizable to everyone? And in our modern world of social media and instant communication, could a case like this even happen again? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to Crazy Crime Diary for more true crime stories that changed history.